Most foldable phones chase bigger screens, but the real battle is hidden inside the hinge. New supply chain talk says Samsung is already rebuilding the hinge for the Galaxy Z TriFold 2 from scratch. If that's true, thinner hardware could arrive sooner than anyone expects, and it could reshape the entire foldable lineup. Start with the numbers because they explain why this hinge story matters. The first Z TriFold measures between 3.9 and 4.2 mm thin when unfolded, and 12.9 mm thick when folded. That folded thickness is the wall Samsung has to break through if the second generation wants broader appeal. Now the fresh chatter. Sources tied to Samsung's supply partners claim the company is already developing an entirely new hinge solution, built from the ground up specifically for the Z TriFold 2. The goal sounds simple, but the execution is brutal. Make a 3-panel device feel slimmer, close flatter, and still survive real daily use. A trifold hinge is not just a bendy joint. It's a moving mechanical system that has to control pressure, guide the display, manage dust resistance, keep alignment, and maintain a consistent fold radius so the screen isn't stressed. When you add a second fold, tolerances get even tighter. A tiny mistake in the geometry can turn into a visible gap, extra thickness, or uneven wear over time. That's why the phrase entirely new hinge solution matters. The redesign from scratch usually means Samsung believes the first approach hit a physical limit. To go thinner, the company likely needs changes in multiple places at once. The hinge spine, the way the plates stack, the internal support layers under the display, and the way the device closes when it's fully folded. And here's the interesting part. The same supply chain talks says the hinge work won't stay exclusive to the trifold form factor. A simplified but improved version, with technical adjustments, could show up in the Z Fold 8. There's even mention that it could land in a fold wide later this year. That detail is important because it signals Samsung might be using the trifold project as a hinge laboratory. Trifold hardware forces the company to solve the hardest mechanical problems first. If Samsung can make a 3-panel device thinner and more stable, then bringing those learnings to a book-style foldable and a clamshell should be easier. So what could an improved hinge actually deliver for the rest of the lineup? First, thickness. Even small gains matter. The fraction of a millimeter shaved from a hinge stack can turn into a noticeably slimmer feel in the hand, especially on devices that already carry weight and width. Second, the fold feel. People talk about screens and cameras, but the fold action is the soul of foldable. A hinge that opens smoothly, holds position confidently, and closes without crunchiness makes the whole device feel premium and dependable. Third, the gap when closed. Many buyers still judge foldables by how flat they shut. Any reduction in the closing gap can improve pocketability, reduce dust entry points, and make the device look more refined on a table. Now let's connect this to the original Z TriFold. Even with limited availability, long-term impressions have said the hinge already feels solid and reassuringly durable. That's the baseline. So if Samsung is truly rebuilding the mechanism, this isn't about fixing a weak hinge. It's about refining the whole experience and chasing a slimmer profile for a wider audience. And wider audience is the key phrase here. The first model never really had a wide release. If Samsung wants the Z TriFold 2 to go global, it needs more than a spectacle device. It needs to feel practical. It needs to feel portable. It needs to feel like it belongs in a pocket, not just on a demo table. Now we have another layer of rumors that adds fuel to the whole conversation. The idea of a giant display, roughly 10 inches, and possible S Pen integration. The stylus rumor is tied to patent activity and leaked chatter suggesting Samsung may store the pen inside one of the hinges. That concept sounds exciting on paper. Built-in storage, magnetic retention, maybe even hinge-based charging, and sensors that confirm the pen is seated properly. If Samsung pulls that off cleanly, it turns a trifold device into a legitimate productivity tool. Note-taking, sketching, quick markups, document signing, and precise selection all become frictionless. And for viewers who miss the old days of a pen always being there, a hinge-stored stylus sounds like a big deal. The folding display is already delicate. Any pen insertion system has to avoid poking, flexing, or dragging against screen layers. Then there's placement. If the pen sits near the center of the unfolded device, it could interfere with how the display lays flat or how the chassis distributes pressure when closed. Even the simplest detail, like a latch or magnetic channel, can steal internal volume, which fights directly against the thinness goal. So the Hinge redesign rumor and the S Pen rumor collide in one place: internal space. Samsung can't magically add features while also making the body thinner unless it finds a smarter way to stack components and route internal structures. That's why a ground-up Hinge design sounds plausible. If Samsung wants new functions without a thickness penalty, the Hinge becomes the place where engineering has to perform miracles. Now add the timeline rumor. Some chatter points to 2027 for launch expectations. If that window is real, Samsung has time to iterate, stress test, and refine a complex TriFold platform. It also gives the company time to explore alternative pen technologies, including approaches that reduce reliance on a traditional digitizer layer. If Samsung can change how pen input works, it might free up space, reduce layers, and help the thinness push. At the same time, it's worth keeping the hype controlled. Patent filings don't guarantee shipping products. Leaks can conflict. Supply chain talk can reflect prototypes that never reach mass production. So the smart way to read this is as a direction signal. Samsung is likely pushing hard on next-generation Hinge engineering, and the TriFold line is a prime candidate to debut it. Now, while Samsung works on its next TriFold, the competitive pressure isn't sitting still. Huawei is also linked to ongoing TriFold development, with chatter pointing to a new model later in 2026, potentially with major design changes and a heavier focus on style. That matters because competition forces faster iteration. When two brands chase the same form factor, you get rapid refinement in hardware feel, materials, and mechanical durability. So if Samsung is truly rebuilding the Hinge system now, it could be responding to multiple forces at once: the push for global readiness, the demand for thinner foldables, and the need to stay ahead in the TriFold race. Here's the practical takeaway for viewers who just want to know what to watch for. Watch for thickness claims first. If leaks start pointing to a clear reduction in folded thickness, that will validate the Hinge redesign story. Then watch for Hinge language. Phrases like new water drop geometry, reduced gap, improved stress distribution, stronger multi-link structure, or better dust resistance often show up when a Hinge redesign is real. Finally, watch for cross-model hints. If you see separate leaks about the Z Fold 8 getting a new Hinge feel or a slimmer profile, that would support the claim that the TriFold engineering work is being shared. If Samsung can deliver a thinner TriFold device that still feels solid, and then pass those gains down to the rest of the foldable lineup, that's the kind of step forward that makes foldables feel less like experiments and more like normal daily drivers. The Hinge is the real headline behind the Z TriFold 2 talk. The thinner TriFold requires a full mechanical rethink, and the same engineering could carry into the Z Fold 8 and Galaxy Z Flip 8. Add the S Pen chatter and the stakes rise fast. If Samsung delivers, foldables get slimmer, sturdier, and easier to live with. Drop your prediction in the comments. Will Samsung prioritize thinness, durability, or S Pen features first on the Z TriFold 2? Then pick one foldable you own or want, and say what Hinge change would convince you to upgrade. So, that's all we know for now. We'll be sure to keep you updated as soon as we have more information. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.